On a morning in February 1892, in the Cherokee Nation, 3 men set on horseback. One of them slowly raises a lever-action rifle to his shoulder, taking aim at another. The man with the rifle is Stand Rowe. Sitting 30 feet behind him is John Hicks. The man staring down the barrel is Andrew Colvard. As we see in this photograph, Rowe is armed with a Winchester repeating rifle, a weapon capable of delivering rapid, lethal fire. As Rowe aims the Winchester, Hicks laughs aloud. He pulls off his hat, strikes his horse with it, and shouts to Colvard, "Take off your hat and die like a man." Rowe pulls the trigger, firing twice. Colvard's horse wheels around and runs, but Colvard falls to the road, dead from a bullet through the chest. Rowe and Hicks immediately ride away together. John Hicks never touched the rifle. He took no part in the physical struggle. Yet the government charged him with murder, arguing that his spoken words made him as guilty as the man who pulled the trigger. At trial, the judge gave the jury a specific instruction. If Hicks's words had the actual effect of encouraging Rowe to shoot, then Hicks was guilty of murder. This raises a question of criminal liability. If one person's speech causes a crime to happen, does the law view that person the same as if they intended that outcome? Hicks testified that he had no desire to see Colvard dead. He claimed Rowe was in a dangerous mood, and that he yelled those words out of fear for his own safety, believing Rowe might shoot him next. Hicks was convicted and sentenced to death. His appeal arrived at the Supreme Court of the United States, seen in this photograph from the 1890s. The court reviewed the trial record and identified a flaw in the instructions. They argued that in criminal law, causing a lethal effect is legally meaningless without the specific intent to achieve that effect. The trial judge told the jury, if the deliberate and intentional use of words was the effect to encourage one man to kill another, he who uttered these words is presumed to have intended that effect. The Supreme Court observed that the judge merged 2 distinct concepts, the physical act of speaking and the specific intent of that speech. Criminal law requires mens rea, or a guilty mind. This is the specific mental state required to commit a crime. To be an accomplice, you must possess the mental state of wanting the crime to succeed. Under the trial judge's logic, the sequence is direct. Words are spoken, the shooter is encouraged, and a murder occurs. The Supreme Court's corrected standard inserts a required barrier. There must be a gatekeeper of specific intent between the spoken words and the encouragement. It is not enough that words accidentally incited the shooter. The speaker must utter them with the express purpose of facilitating the crime. By equating the intent to speak with the intent to encourage, the trial court punished Hicks for Rowe's reaction rather than his own mindset. The court then addressed a second instruction, the concept of constructive presence. This rule states if Hicks was present at the scene to aid Rowe, he's guilty of murder, even if he did nothing because his help wasn't required. As a theory of criminal law, this is an established principle. However, it requires a specific prerequisite, evidence of a prior conspiracy or arrangement between the parties. When the court reviewed the evidence from that morning, they found no testimony indicating Hicks and Rowe made any agreement to ambush Colvard. This timeline of the morning's events shows the men leaving a dance and riding on paths that converged by chance. There was no planning phase and no communication between Hicks and Rowe prior to the standoff. Providing a jury with a rule that has no factual basis in the trial record is a significant legal error. It invites the jury to convict based on a phantom conspiracy, a premeditated plot that existed only in the judge's instructions, not in the evidence. Beyond the definitions of intent, the court scrutinized how the trial judge handled witness credibility. The judge directed the jury to weigh Hicks's testimony against the men who witnessed the shooting from a porch 100 yards away. The judge told the jury to look for conflicts between Hicks's statements and the statements of the other witnesses who are telling the truth. This phrasing assumes the prosecution's witnesses are truthful, which leaves the jury with the logical conclusion that the defendant must be lying. The judge further commented that Hicks had a large interest in the result of the case, suggesting this motive would naturally lead him away from the truth. The Supreme Court noted that this commentary undermines the statute that grants the accused the right to testify in their own behalf. A trial judge cannot maintain the presumption of innocence while subtly predetermining which witnesses are truthful. The Supreme Court was divided on how to handle these instructions. Justice David Josiah Brewer authored a dissenting opinion, arguing against reversing Hicks's conviction. Justice Brewer argued that ordinary jurors understand the definition of abet and would not be misled by a lack of technical legal qualifiers. Brewer also noted that Hicks's lawyer used a wholesale exception, objecting to an entire page of jury instructions at once, rather than pinpointing the exact errors during the trial. Justice George Shiras, writing for the majority, countered that the entire context of the charge was necessary to reveal how the judge's instructions worked together to mislead the jury. Ultimately, the majority prioritized substantive justice over procedural rules, deciding that a man's life cannot be forfeited due to a lawyer's formatting choices. We return to the standoff in February 1892. Hicks's words to Colvard may have been cowardly or desperate, but the court asked a final question: were they murder? To answer that, the law must establish a link connecting Hicks to Roe's physical act. The Supreme Court required two things to finalize that link: a specific intent to encourage the crime and a prior factual conspiracy. The evidentiary record fails to satisfy either requirement. The legacy of Hicks v. U.S. dictates that actus reus, the physical act of a crime, requires a specific mens rea from an accomplice. In the machinery of criminal law, precise language defines the boundary between an innocent bystander and a convicted murderer.